Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is more people to come alive. Find a career, an industry, a job, and then find a way to get joy and happiness out of it. Or find a job, career, or industry that makes you happy, that gives you joy. Which is the right one? Which is the right way of approaching career choices? These are just some of the topics we will explore today on IWPK Masterclass number 2.
You're listening to Intentionality with Paul Kemp.
A very warm welcome, Francois, to the IWPK studio.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be back. Happy New Year to you. May 2025 be an incredible year for all our listeners, both of us. Yeah, very excited for the year.
Thanks, Francois. Love it. Love it to be back here. I hope you had a great rest and you found some restoration during this rest. I love the topic that you chose for us for today's second masterclass.
Yes.
And initially, when we had a discussion about topics for this year, I wasn't that excited about the topic.
Yeah.
Until I heard what you had in mind for today. So let's dive right into it. Let's talk about intentional career choices today.
Absolutely. Very excited, Paul. Yeah, I think, when I came with the idea, it was really driven by a passion of mine to give the audience something to think about. We said, how do we create these masterclasses that they're intentional, but that there's food for thoughts? And I think what a brilliant topic to discuss your career, because 70%, 60%, 80%, depending on who you are and where you are in your life and the decisions you make, you will be spending working. So brilliant topic to kick the year off. Everybody's fresh with new intentions, New Year's resolutions. I'm pretty sure if you're journaling or you're thinking about your life as a whole, that there's a sphere around your job, your vocation. So let's dive straight in.
Interesting thing that I read. You will spend in your life 90,000 hours working. That's if you work 8 hours a day for 45 years. It's an extraordinary number.
Wow.
And I think it's important to understand what that number means.
Yes.
It's such a large part of your life, and you need to make a choice, an intentional choice, very early on in your life, whether that 90,000 hours is going to make you happy, it's going to make you sad, it's going to make you angry, it's going to bring joy into your life. And I think that's what we want to delve into today.
100%. I think that's phenomenal perspective. Often people jump into their career and they think, well, this is me for the rest of my life. But to put a number to it, 90,000 hours, I think it can bring new perspective. But I want to take you back to a thing you said earlier and maybe just bring my story in. So I often tell people that my career, I frame as the accidental profession. I'm an industrial psychologist by trade who's now a tech founder and a business owner and a CEO. And all of it was not planned. It's accidental. But when we start out our career, if we just go back to the practicality of it, you're 18, 19 years old. If you come from a traditional family, you're going to go and you have the funds and you have the privilege and, you have the access to go to university or to tertiary education. You have to make this decision. What am I going to study? And that there is the very first decision that kind of starts opening up doors towards a future career path. And my thinking around it, as I got older and I reflect back to this topic and this part of the conversation, is how difficult such a massive decision is for someone relatively young. And now for all the 18, 19-year-olds listening, I know you think that you know everything and you just finished school and you've got it all figured out, but you haven't. And it's a massive decision, right? At the age of 18, 19 to make.
Okay, but I think that gives us a great opportunity to start off by you telling us just very quickly what that journey looked like for you and how you got to where you are today. Just briefly, because I think it's a good example of what you're referring to.
Excellent. So 2 points. One, what was the journey and how did I get where I am today?
Okay.
So as a matriculant, as a kid at high school, I was an avid tennis player. I come from a big tennis family. Very proud to say that, my life was tennis. And I wanted to become a professional tennis player. So I wanted to go to the States. I wanted to go and play college tennis. And I have a heart condition. So you know this, the audience, some members might not know this, but I've had 2 heart operations in my life. And my heart did not allow the physical requirements of a college and professional tennis player at the time. So I couldn't go. And I had to make a decision, well, what now? And so Potch University approached me and they said, listen, we'll give you a scholarship, come play tennis for us. And so I was like, yeah, let's go and play tennis in Potch. And obviously at the time had to make a decision what to go and study. And I sat with my dad and we actually, which is a bit of a funny side story, most kids standard 9 matric do these assessments at varsity around, what should you go and study. And my report came back saying I need to be a race car driver, which is very funny.
That's weird.
Maybe because of the risk taking in me or, whatever, adrenaline. But I ended up going and studying psychology. And I wanted to be South Africa's next Dr. Phil. And that's an honest, true one-liner. I really believe that, that was what a psychologist was, which again, from an insights perspective, just highlights how little kids know about the world of work. But that we can potentially have some time to double click on. So I went to Potch, studied psychology. I was there for 7 years. I walked away with 5 degrees, which was never the plan. 7 years, 5 degrees, psychology, industrial psychology, honors masters, the whole thing. And at the end of the 7-year journey, all streams of psychologists need to go and do an internship. And industrial psychs don't really get to choose where you go. The opportunities are limited. And so you're just very thankful where you end up. And so again, got an opportunity back in Pretoria at a consulting firm specializing in psychometric assessments. That's the season when you and I met.
Yes.
And to fast forward that, I did that for 5-6 years. And after that, started my own consulting firm, then started Whamley, built the tech business. That's where we are now. But key highlight through all of that is how did I get here? And I followed magic. I followed energy and passion and flow and just where I felt like I could make a difference without expecting the outcome, the desired outcome. I know some people start their career and they desperately want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an advocate or whatever the case might be. That wasn't my story. My story was, in what space am I now and is there flow? Can I follow that energy, that magic, I call it? And looking back now, I actually got a photo, a memory last week on my iPhone, where last week, 12 years ago, I started my career. So it's been 12 years of following the magic.
Fantastic. 2 quick comments. First, I also played tennis at school. Never had the dream of being a professional tennis player, but we still haven't played a game of tennis.
We haven't.
Must find a way. Either tennis or paddle.
Maybe you can beat me in tennis.
Let's see.
Because it's not going well with the golf.
Watch out. And then the second comment, that thing about being the next Dr. Phil. Maybe not quite Dr. Phil, but I think the way we want to go with this masterclass,
You never know.
You never know where you might end up.
You never know.
Interesting journey. I think just maybe from my side,
tell me, share yours, please.
Brief story about my journey and where I got to where I am now, because I do think there's some value in that for the listeners and the viewers. I was convinced at school what I wanted to do. I didn't need these, I think they call them aanlegtoetse in Afrikaans. I can't even remember what they call them in English. But I didn't even need those tests because I knew exactly what I wanted to do from a very early age. I was one of those weird kids. From an early age, I said I wanted to be an actuary. To me, that was everything. That was all I wanted to do. That's all I ever dreamed of.
A maths guru.
Yes. And where's the problem with that? By matric, I was told that my maths wasn't good enough to be an actuary. Simple solution, go for extra maths classes.
Yes.
Went for extra maths classes, got to the final exams, and lo and behold, I got a B in maths. And I was told, forget about the actuary thing, went and studied BCom managerial accounting, finished university and started working in the property industry. Then I worked in the second-hand furniture industry. Then I worked in the antiques industry.
Sure.
And probably for the first 4 or 5 years of my life, I was doing jobs that I did simply because that was what was available.
Yes.
But every single job I did, I felt this wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. And it was not just because I couldn't be an actuary.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel right to me. It felt as if there wasn't a fit.
Yeah.
And then I accidentally landed in the insurance industry in 1998. Pure coincidence that I got there. And same story. It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But it was something that I felt was a job. I could make some money out of it, support my young family. But I didn't fall in love with it.
Yeah.
And the change for me came around 2006 when I had been at my current employer, FFG, for a year and I didn't like my job.
Yeah.
I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like the people I was working for. Things just didn't feel right. And I was looking for another job. And something happened in me at that time.
Yes.
It was 2006. I was 33 years old and I realized something, that if I go on this way, I run the risk of working the rest of my life and never finding something that gives me joy.
Yeah.
You have to find joy in what you do.
Yes.
You have to find meaning and purpose, and that meaning and purpose and making a difference in people's lives is what will eventually give you joy.
Yeah.
And that was the magic for me. That's when it started turning. And here I sit 19 years later, and I can honestly say with 100% certainty, I have massive joy in my work.
Yes.
Purpose. I feel valued. I feel as if I make a difference. And I want us to just explore that a little bit more and try and help people, as you say, especially young people, getting into their careers, in figuring out how to, as soon as possible, get to that point where you find that joy, that elusive joy in what you do every single day.
You know, you mentioned 3-4 times, you alluded to emotions. I felt there was something in me. And I think that's such a key part, a key ingredient of this conversation is you will start out your career, whether it gets chosen for you, whether it's the only opportunity at hand, whether that's the only thing that you can afford or do to afford to take care of your young family. That's fine. You know, I always tell people I speak to around their jobs, wherever you are is wherever you need to be, but what is the emotion attached to that job? And if you aren't going to listen to that emotion, especially when it's repeating, and an easy example is, how do you feel on a Sunday afternoon? How do you feel on a Friday morning? Are you dreading your Sundays and can you not wait to get to the Friday? Those are small little flags and triggers in our lives from an emotional perspective that I think we need to grow awareness towards. Because at the end of the day, Paul, if you are spending 70% of your life in something that you're unhappy and there's no joy, there's no bliss, there's no passion, there's no purpose, I'm seriously challenging you to think about why. And a big part of this conversation is our own conditioning. So many people I engage with they think that this is just my reality and I cannot do anything about it. And I think there's such a big ingredient here around listening to those emotions that get stirred up in you, because our emotions come from our experiences. You know, what do you experience on a daily basis in your job? And I'm sure we'll touch on this, but no one is under the illusion that for the rest of your life, for 100% of the time, you're going to be doing everything that you love.
Of course not. It's impossible.
Not.
Yeah. There's something there that I want to ask you. Yes, I know a lot of people that can't wait for Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
That dread their Sunday afternoons. That dread going back to work. Is the answer find another job, or is there another answer? In my experience, I always thought the answer was find another job. And I think the point I was trying to make with my story is it's not necessarily the right answer for people listening.
Yes.
There's definitely something in figuring out what it is in your current job that will make that difference for you not to dread that Sunday afternoon.
Yeah. You know, I recently had a conversation with someone young. They just entered their career. They got a job in the area that they studied. They spent 2 months in this job, and then they decided this is not for me. And the reason was the job is not in line with what I studied. The expectation is not the reality. And my advice to anybody who's in that scenario right there is to say, listen, did you give yourself enough time to fully explore and understand your context and your current world of work? Which brings me back to the comment around awareness, and I'm going to answer your question. I don't believe that the answer is I'm in the wrong job always. Unless you go and do the work, go and sit down, figure out what is it from this job that's making me unhappy. Is it my relationships? Is it my line manager? Is it the culture? Is it the actual daily activities associated with the expectations of the role? What are those things? Go and figure that out. It starts with the emotion, but the emotion is not the data point. The emotion is the outcome. What in the data can help you understand why I'm feeling like this? Am I dreading this Sunday because tomorrow morning will start in a toxic environment with animosity, unfairness, bullying, whatever the case might be? Because if it's an external organizational factor, it will be really hard unless you're in a position of power for one individual to influence that. And that's the harsh reality. Organizations have cultures and humans are part of that culture, but that's typically driven from leadership behavior. Unfortunately, that's the reality of org culture. So that's difficult to control. But if it is in your control around your mindset, if it's in your control around how you decide to show up, if it's in your conditioning around what you were taught and you actually believe around the world of work, there's some magic to go and work on yourself and then not necessarily have to change your role or your job.
You read my mind. I was about to interrupt you when you were going through the reasons why you should possibly consider changing your job.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing is how you show up, the attitude that you get to work with.
Yes.
If you haven't tried to fix that
Yes.
in the first place,
Yes.
maybe that's the place to start. And if you get that right, if you start figuring out the way you arrive, the way you pitch up for work, and you then find the external factors still not working, that's when you
By all
should
means.
potentially consider making a change.
By all means. You know, Paul, around showing up, I've got quite a strong opinion around in what condition or in what mental space do you show up on a Monday. So let me give you a couple of practical examples. If your weekend is extremely hectic, right? It's one party after the other party, after the other braai, after the other activity, whatever your weekend is filled with. And that is a rush into Monday. You're starting a bit on the back foot. You're tired. You haven't given yourself time to reflect on a Sunday around what did you do? What are you going to do in the next week? So preparation is key around mindset. In what mental state am I arriving? In what physical state am I arriving? Did I sleep well? Am I prepared for the meeting I'm walking into? Do I know what my diary looks like? All of these small little micro factors, I believe, can help individuals get into a better mental space. Because you're either going to control your career or your career is going to control you. And I think, those are some small tips and tricks for the audience to think about. How do you show up on a Monday? Are you prepared? Did you sleep well? Are you ready?
I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the FFG Group of Companies. Take another step into living a more intentional life by being more intentional with your finances and insurance. As a trusted provider of a wide range of financial services, the FFG Group offers innovative, tailored solutions that help companies and individuals thrive and flourish. They are an amazing company that I believe in because they embody intentionality in everything they do, and I'm proud to partner with them. FFG is an authorized financial services provider. Ready to take the next step? Click the link below and start making better, more intentional financial decisions, or visit their website. Remember, with FFG, you create the memories, we ensure the journey.
I've spoken a lot about joy and happiness in the workplace. A while ago, I did an episode. It was episode 15 of IWPK, where I took a whole episode to spend on these concepts of happiness, joy, and bliss, and the difference between the three.
Yeah.
Now, I'm quickly going to just read what the definitions were that I discussed in that episode. But I would love to hear just your ideas around these three concepts, how you view joy, happiness, and bliss, and maybe then just something about how that applies to the workplace. Yeah. So the definitions that I liked the most around these three words was, firstly, happiness is simply about positive emotions and life satisfaction. Joy is a feeling of great pleasure and happiness. And bliss is supreme happiness and utter joy.
Yes.
Now, purely based on those three definitions, I don't think it's happiness that we should be looking for in our workplace. I actually don't even think it's joy. I think the goal must be bliss.
Yeah.
Your view on these three words?
Did you purposefully, in your design, your opinion of those definitions, did you build them in hierarchy?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
With happiness
Same page.
in the beginning, then joy, then
And
bliss. Yeah.
I think it would be naive of us to believe that our entire career and every day is one blissful moment. I think the foundation, exactly to your definition, I think the foundation of your opinion and your mindset of your career should be one of happiness. Your job should be a source and a contributing factor towards your overall happiness. If anybody listening right now goes, my job does not make me happy, stop, reflect, and seriously consider what we just spoke about in the previous part of the conversation. So I think that should be the baseline of your career. Like, my job really at Whamley makes me extremely happy. I love Mondays. And I take time on Friday afternoons to reflect back with the team and by myself on what we achieved during the week. Not necessarily achievements. What do we do? Where do we spend our time? So that's the baseline for me. what I do believe is to create those moments of bliss, because together with that, from a neurological perspective, there's those dopamine hits, those feel-good hormones that get released that refuel the unbelievable emotion of I'm achieving something, I'm getting somewhere, I'm making that impact, I'm contributing to someone's life, I'm changing the world, if that's, part of your job. So my opinion would be definite seeking moments of bliss continually. If you find a role that you're in bliss all the time, geez, I mean, that must be utopia. I don't know if that exists. Yeah.
I think it's a great point. It's exactly what I wanted. I often tell people how much I love my job, how much I love the company I work for, how much I love everything I do every single day.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond happiness for me.
Yeah.
I genuinely obtain joy in what I do every
Yes.
single day. I look forward to Monday mornings.
Yes.
I'm not going to say I dread Friday afternoons, because at least Friday afternoons bring me closer to the Saturday morning golf. But I definitely don't dread Mondays. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I don't think I'm necessarily at the point yet where I can say my work gives me bliss.
Mm.
And I love this idea you have of, to get from the joy to the bliss, create the moments of bliss.
Yes.
I read something around, I think it was Richard Branson that said it. He said that we spend so much time of our lives at work, and we try and bring fun into our lives at home, in our social life, in what we do. Why shouldn't we bring a bit of fun into the workplace as well? And I think that might be the one missing ingredient I have in my life to go from joy, which is where I am in terms of my career, to bliss. I'm a serious guy. I think you've gotten to know me as a serious guy, and I take my job very seriously.
Yeah.
But I think that missing ingredient around fun is maybe something you can bring into the workplace to actually go from joy to bliss. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I think that's beautiful reflection. But again, I think everybody can define that for themselves. What do you need to get to that bliss moment? For me, it is getting on a stage, being in front of a mic, being in front of people, inspiring people, visiting a client yesterday, sitting, listening to their problems and coming up with a solution that I can see the light bulbs going on. And when I drive away, I genuinely felt like I am helping them change the way that they hire at the iStore, which is the client I was at yesterday. The other thing that you mentioned, Paul, which is extremely important, is this idea that I'm stuck. So if you're listening to this and you're going, well, I'm happy, but I don't have joy and I definitely don't have bliss, I think often people accept it. Well, that's just the card that was dealt for me. And I want to challenge that thinking to go and say, listen, if you really set your mind to it, and it's not just a once-off thing, right? And we can hopefully in the future, other episodes, we can go into what do we do. But I mean, journaling, meditation, intention setting, surrounding yourself with the right people. Like, there are so many little hacks that actually work, the law of attraction, that can move you from point A, happy, to joy and to bliss. And so don't believe that you're stuck. Don't believe that this is just my fate. It's not. It can change.
Love it. Another point, interesting statistic I read. I read that a third, 33% of all people in their first job quit within a year. Now, this was a statistic from the US. I don't have the numbers for South Africa. I'm going to assume it's fairly similar.
Yeah.
Here's my question. And I want to ask you this specifically because I think you have more experience of that whole HR world. Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Mm-hmm.
And before you answer me, here's my view.
Yeah.
I think it's a bad thing simply because when I look at a CV of somebody I want to appoint, one of the first things I look at is their experience, and then the amount of time they spent in each job. And one thing that immediately puts me off is if I see somebody in the first 4 years that they were working, they had 7 jobs.
Yes.
It makes me question their dedication, their commitment.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same? Is it something that you need to try and avoid at all costs? Or do you think there's value in saying, listen, I've been here 3 months, I've been here 6 months. This is not for me. I'm out of here.
Yeah. Paul, I spoke about dopamine earlier, and without going too neurological now, The world we currently live in is one of instant gratification. By a flick of a button, I can order food, I can order clothes. I was in my car waiting for this episode to start on Timo, clicking on a couple of things that I want. The payment's off. I'm expecting in a couple of days. Like, this entire world is instant gratification, right? It's the conditioning of the surrounding and the environment we're in. And unfortunately, your career needs time, reflection, awareness, and dedication. And there's this dichotomy around, am I getting what I want immediately? In other words, is the reality exactly what I expected? And if not, I'm moving on. Now, without stereotyping, unfortunately, it's a generational conversation as well. This instant gratification,
It is, yeah.
this dedication conversation. So I believe it's a both and. Firstly, if you are starting out your career, it is as important to get into the way of the world of work as it is to excel in your actual job. What do I mean by that? When you start your career, you're going to have to pay tax for the first time. You're going to have to, IWPK speaks about finances in every episode. Finances, budgeting, getting used to getting up early, a routine, working off a calendar, listening to instructions, hitting deadlines. These are all world of work skills that regardless of the role you're in, you need to acquire. So if you're young and you're starting out your career and you're bouncing between roles 7 and 4 years, I don't question your dedication as much as I question your willingness to learn and to grow self-awareness. Because what I do advocate for is to get to a point where if you're unhappy, but you also know what you want, do it. Make that hard decision, resign, or find a side hustle, or start something. Follow that magic that we spoke about earlier. But don't do it because you're unhappy because you're not getting exactly what you want too early on. You're too in a hurry. You want the gratification too quickly. And unfortunately, Paul, together with looking at that CV around jumping around, you're not building depth. A lot of HR execs that I engage with tell me that people get either promoted too quickly or they bounce around jobs so much because they're chasing increases that when they finally land in their dream job, they don't have the depth. So they're out of their depth. In other words, they can't deal with the complexity of the role because of their capability that they did not give enough time to grow and excel in.
Excellent point. There's a quote that I wrote down that I was looking for an opportunity to read to you. And
Right.
I think this really sums up a lot of what you've just spoken about and what we've already covered in today's masterclass.
Yeah.
The quote is as follows. It says, always be grateful for what you have, but never stop pursuing what sets your soul on fire at work.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great
What a
summary,
summary.
such a good end to what we're discussing here
Yeah.
today. You know, look at what you've got at work. Be careful to just jump from one job to another.
Yeah.
Be grateful for what you have because things are difficult out there.
Yeah.
You know, we're sitting with
Of
a
course.
massive unemployment crisis in South Africa. You can't just leave a job just because one or two things are bothering you. So be grateful for what you have. But I love those words. Pursue something that sets your soul on fire
Wow.
at work.
Wow, that's the bliss.
That's the bliss.
I want us to end off by asking you a last question.
Yes.
Okay, so you spoke about loving your job, and I know you do. Like, I know you have seen you at FFG. I've seen you in action in front of your employees. I know that you, like, I can guarantee anybody listening that is you. What, apart from your role, do you think in 2025 you're going to add to increase that bliss? I'm putting you on the spot, but is there one thing that you would like to commit to and add to
Well,
increase and get you to the bliss?
There's a couple of things, and that's
Right.
going to bring me to a last question for you. So the first one is undoubtedly fun. I've already mentioned
Yes.
it. I'm a serious person. I've been told by the production team, smile more on the camera, and I'm trying to do it. But I think fun is really something that I have
Yeah.
to try and focus on bringing in, not just in my social life, but in my work. So fun is definitely one of them. But I've also decided this year to do certain things that matter in my life with more intensity. I did an episode last week on Word of the Year.
Yeah.
And I told the listeners and the viewers what my Word of the Year was. And it's all about intensity. It's all about taking things to a next level. And that is something that I want to do in my work as well.
Okay.
But very specific. I'm not talking about everything in my work was just be taken to a next level. So one of the things that I'm going to focus on in 2025 in our company specifically is developing relationships.
Okay.
Um,
Beautiful.
I want to make that my biggest focus as CEO of the company in 2025.
Were you inspired by episode 1?
Yes. Friendships. The point about this is that I want to get closer to our clients.
Okay.
I want to develop a stronger relationship with them. And not just a professional relationship, really getting to know people, really developing a strong relationship with them, but not just our clients. I want to develop closer relationships with our employees, with my colleagues.
Beautiful.
Understanding what makes them tick, understand what's important to them, so that we can build an organization where not just we bring in a bit more fun, but we're getting closer to each other. We're building a stronger culture. So those are the kind of things that I'm intentionally going to do in 2025 when it comes to work.
I specifically look forward to hearing what you did that created more fun.
Great stuff. I spoke about the word of the year. You and I do it quite often. Your word of the year, if you want to share it today.
Absolutely. I'm very passionate about word of the year. So my word of the year for 2025 is brave. And brave for me is around being bold and brave to make big decisions. There are massive decisions to be made from a professional perspective that I'm looking forward to, but that also scare me. And so being intentional around the word brave and reminding myself that when I have these emotions of, oh my goodness, can I do this? Can we do this? Is this the right decision to be brave? So very excited about brave.
Love it. Excellent word. That brings us to the end of today's episode. I started off this episode with a quote.
Yeah.
I want to go back to that quote.
Yes.
The quote is by a guy called Howard Thurman. And he said, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and then go do it. Because the world needs more people to come alive. It is my sincere hope today's episode, today's masterclass, has inspired some people out there.
Yeah.
Come alive in what they do.
I love that. Let the world feel the weight of who you are and let them deal with it. John Eldridge. Love it.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Paul. It's been great.
Awesome as always. I'll see you again next month.
Thanks for watching Intentionality with Paul Kemp. Subscribe, like, and click that bell to get notified when we release more episodes on how to live a life of intention and purpose.